Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Mechanical Warriors. My name's Josh Cav, and in this episode I'm going to be road tuning my two-rotor RX8 and also addressing some of the mystery surrounding tuning rotaries and road tuning in general. We are going to cover a tune on this on the dyno as well next, but I just wanted to address a lot of the crap that's out there about tuning. People think that you have to be some sort of scientist to tune a rotary, but it's not true. The process is actually quite simple. I'm gonna address that and show you guys exactly how I road tuned this car. Okay guys, so first of all, I want to take you through the Haltech software and show you what I have done for the tune to get it to where it currently is. Now, no one has touched this car but myself. Nothing. Not the tune, not the engine, not the paint, not everything has been done myself. Having said that, I'm not a professional tuner. I do have an ability to learn fast, but I'm not a professional tuner. So anything that we talk about here today is just my own personal experience. So just take that into consideration when if you are attempting to do tunes yourself based off the information you learn here today. So let's dive into the software, and I will walk you through step by step everything that I have done to get the car to its current tune and where it is now. Okay guys, so here we are inside the NSP software, which is the Haltech software. Now, I'm going to try and make this section as quick as possible. If there is anything in particular in the NSP software you'd like me to do a video on its own, please let me know in the comments, and I'll be happy to go into detail into any specific functions or features of the Nexus R5 system that Haltech offer. I'm very, very familiar with all of the features and functions within this ECU. So, there's just so much in it to put it all into one video would it'd be hours long. So in this section, what we're going to cover is the basic fuel functions or the basic things you need to do to set up your map in order to start doing road tuning in your car. Now, with this road tuning, we're going to be using the O2 correction control, which is awesome. It's such an awesome feature that most ECU manufacturers now offer, the O2 correction control, and we'll explain how all that works once we get to that point. So right now what we're looking at is a map from Haltech, which is a base map that is in the Haltech software. I can show you where. So if we go up here to File, Open, Base Maps, and then you can select your vehicle type. Where are we? Mazda. Yeah, RX7, because it's a RX7 REW engine in the RX8. Single turbo conversion. Now, these maps that Haltech offer, word of warning, they are very, very basic. I would not put these maps in your car, jump out and go put your foot down on the throttle, because you will destroy your engine if you do something like this. These are basically just a map to get you to a point where you can start the engine and start tinkering with it. I want to make that point very clear. But the cool thing about these base maps is they load absolutely every single feature and function into the Haltech software. So it does save a lot of time using these base maps and then correcting your values as you go. So the first thing that you want to set up in the Haltech software is actually your ignition timing. So, well, actually, if we're going to talk about the very first thing that you need to do is your crank angle sensor or crank angle trigger within the engine itself. We'll do a separate video on that and cover that later, but basically what it does is Haltech ECU needs to know top dead center is in the engine, or the ECU knows exactly where top dead center is. It's very, very, very important. It's probably one of the most important settings that you have to get exactly right before you dive into any sort of tuning or timing values in the car. But we'll cover that in another video. I'll show you how we set that up. But after you have set up top dead center and you've got it reading correctly and your triggers reading correctly and all of that sort of stuff, the next thing that we want to do is go to our ignition map and work on our ignition base map. Now, again, this is the map that is given to us by Haltech. Um, Again, I do not recommend using this map to go out and just jump in your car and drive it like a normal car. This is just to get the car started. And I'm going to show you an ignition map that's a little bit more simpler than this with rotary tuning that is just a little bit more safer and more simple to set up. So the first thing we need to do is connect the ECU to the computer in the car. Now, awesome function and feature about Haltech is when you turn the ECU on, it puts its own Wi-Fi network up, which the computer can then connect to, and you don't need any cables or anything like that to connect to the car. You can actually get an extended aerial, which I have. So if you're doing like track days or whatever, you can be quite a distance away from the car and still connect to the car, download data and check things about the engine relatively quickly and make adjustments if you're, racing on a track or something like that. So let me just turn the car on. Okay, so now we are in the ignition map that I have set up in the Mazda. You can see it's quite a lot different to the map that was supplied by Haltech. And the the first thing that we want to basically set up, and we want to make sure that this is correct, is the boost side of the map. So you can see that from 0 pound, now just to for those of you who don't understand what we're looking at here, on the left-hand side here, we've got our RPM value, right? And then in between here up the top, we've got zero pressure. So this is atmospheric pressure now. Now, if the engine's running at idle, then it's going to be in a vacuum, which means it will pull our table back somewhere around here at idle, 2.9. Other engines that are not ported and whatnot will have a higher vacuum at lower RPM, and they'll be sort of more in the 5.8 area. But because this engine has been quite a large bridge port in it, the vacuum is not so great. So we're sitting at around about 2.9 or 4.4. We sort of fluctuate around that area in the idle section. Anyway, that's you can see this cross here. This cross represents where the engine actually is currently. So obviously the engine's off, so we're at 0 RPM and we're at zero pressure. So we're in this table here. Now, as the engine changes and revs, this cross will move across these tables to represent exactly where we are on the map. So that's what you're looking at here. Now, these numbers in the ignition base map or in the ignition map, these numbers represent degrees of timing. Okay, so up here we've got 24 degrees of timing, or 24 degrees advanced timing, I should say, in at 1,000 RPM, right? 15 degrees timing at 0 RPM, 22 at 2.9, and so on and so on. Now, with a rotary, from about 20 pound backwards to your 0 pound, if we start off at this map 7 degrees at 20 pound and we drop it back linearly to 24 at 0, this is a really good, safe ignition timing map to start with. And then we want to put all of these values in these table linearly. So with a rotary, we can do this, and they actually tend to make more power by doing a linear ignition map in this way. Now, on the vacuum side, we can use a lot of the values from the Haltech base map. There is a few values that I've changed here. I'm not going to go into too much detail about that, but basically the values here we changed to try and get our exhaust gas temperatures down when we're in decel mode in the car. So what happens is there's kind of a balance between ignition timing and fuel that's being dumped into the vehicle when it's in decel. Depending on where you have your timing and your and how much fuel you've got, you're going to either increase or decrease your exhaust gas temperatures. So, for example, if your timing is very retarded, let's say for up here, for example, this is only 7 degrees at 20%, which is pretty retarded timing, but it's more of a safer value. However, by having a more retarded timing level, we're actually increasing our exhaust gas temperatures, but advancing the timing on the other side, then we lean more closer towards detonation, which obviously will destroy the engine. So we have to find sort of the happy medium between them two values, and that's our sweet spot. And this basically just comes from trial and error by looking at the data and then slowly making changes until we get that sweet spot. Now, on road tuning, it's a little bit difficult to get all of this stuff perfectly accurate because you don't have a reading for torque values that the car's producing. So this makes it very difficult to get these types of settings absolutely perfect, but you can get them pretty close on the road. With timing in a rotary, the we don't really chase power by with the timing in a rotary. The power is made by getting our fuel AFR settings right and our injector angle timing right, which I'll go into shortly. So that's basically how these maps work. And you can have a look at this map here and feel free to copy it as a start base map. Again, this is what works with my engine, and I find it to be very safe with my engine. I do believe it will be relatively safe with other engines as well. But again, please take the necessary precautions and don't just load this map into your car and jump in it and put your foot down. You have to gradually go through your RPM levels and check everything, which we'll go through in a minute. So, all right, that's our base ignition table. So let's move on to the split angle. Now, split angle is something that is exclusive to rotary engines only. And the split angle basically means you've got two sets of spark plugs inside the rotary engine, your leading and your trailing. Now, the leading obviously fires first based off this map here, and then the trailing plugs fire based off this map. Now, again, this is degrees of timing in the engine, and we are saying basically after the first leading plug fires, the trailing plug is going to fire at 10 degrees after the first plug. Okay. Now, universally across the board, 10 degrees of timing is sort of the safe starting point across your entire RPM range with rotaries. Some people like to back these off to around 8 degrees at higher RPMs. But you don't really gain any power really by changing these values. It is more for exhaust, burning that last bit of fuel that's coming out of the exhaust. However, you do have to be careful changing these values because you can cause damage in the engine by changing these values too dramatically. So to be safe, you can set this at 10 degrees across the board, and that's a good starting point. The next thing is the zero demand. Now, this is another really cool feature that most ECUs offer that enables you when you don't have your accelerator pedal on, or you're not giving the car any input on the accelerator pedal, your timing goes to a zero demand table, which is this, which means we can set the degrees of timing whilst our foot is off the accelerator. Now, this is really cool to get that brap brap sound happening at idle. And I'm going to make a separate video on how to get your rotary to brap, because a lot of people think that after you do your Bridgeport, the engine will just brap, and it's not true. The engine does need to be tuned correctly in order for it to brap. So we'll go into that later. Corrections is basically self-explanatory. Correction control, correction to the ignition map based off coolant temperature, air temperature. Post-start correction, this is so when the engine starts, we can change the timing for a specific period of time in order for, that lean or rich points when the engine starts and it doesn't quite run right for a few seconds until it clears up. You can correct these issues with post-start correction. RPM limiter correction, we're not going to get into that. And that's basically ignition map. So the next thing is fuel tuning. Now, with the fuel tuning, the first thing that we need to set up is our target lumbar map. Now, this map basically is our starting point or our target air fuel ratio. So these numbers here is I'm actually using my unit options is AFR. So this is we're talking 12.6 to 1 air fuel ratio, and that's what these numbers represent. So with a rotary engine, they like to run between 13.5 and 10.8 in the AFR reading. Now, in the higher RPMs, they run a lot more richer, and this is basically the fuel acts as kind of a coolant inside the combustion chamber to cool down the combustion chamber when the engine's at high RPM and high boost. So a lot of people chase the power by leaning the motor out in the higher RPMs. However, yes, you can make more power, but it's not very much, and you are sacrificing reliability and safety of the engine by doing that. So it's better to run the engine a little bit richer, get that added benefit of the cooling from having a richer air fuel mixture. The other thing too with a rotary, especially if you are using premix in the fuel, your premix or your fuel is basically the lubricant to your apex seals. So the more fuel you add, the more lubricant you have around your apex seals. Another thing too is it's cooling your apex seals. So for example, decel mode, we're also running quite rich at high RPMs because we want that extra fuel dumped in there so that we can cool down the apex seals and keep the engine lubricated as it's in decel mode. Now, between the idle section and the base map for Haltech, they have it at 14.9, I think, which I don't know if other rotaries can run at that level without creating extremely hot exhaust gas temperatures. You got to remember, the leaner that you go, the higher your exhaust gas temperatures will get. And you will get to a point where your engine exhaust manifold will be glowing red hot at idle. And this is because, it can be from two things. You can either have your timing too far retarded, or you can have your air fuel mixture too rich. Too lean. In order to take that heat out of the exhaust, we want to richen up the fuel. Now, at the base map setting that Haltech gave in the 14.9, that gets my exhaust manifolds glowing red hot at idle. Now, I found the sweet spot for my engine was 13.2. It doesn't heat up the exhaust, and it's any more than that, you are getting added benefit of cooling the engine more while it's in decel. However, you're chewing quite a lot of fuel. Anyone who owns a rotary will know that they absolute fuel guzzlers. So anywhere where you can try and reduce that fuel consumption, you can. So finding that sweet spot where your exhaust gas temperatures are not too high is definitely worthwhile experimenting with and getting right, just so that you're getting the best fuel consumption you can out of the engine. All right, so after we've set up our target lumbar map, now Feel free to use this map of mine as a base map to start your own vehicle. However, again, don't load this map into the vehicle, start the car and put your foot down or you will do damage. The next thing that we have to do is correct our base table map. Now, this is the base fuel map. Now, these numbers represent how quickly the injectors are firing. So now what we have to do here is this map, the base map from Haltech, will be sort of somewhat close in the fact that you can start the vehicle and run it at idle. But as soon as you start revving it, you might find that you might get lean spots or rich spots depending on how the map's set up. So what we want to do to correct this is we want to go to our O2 correction control and we want to turn this on. In the beginning, when you're first starting, you want to set your target oscillation amplitude at 0. So what this does is this allows for 0 error in your target lumbar to your base map. So remember, your base map here, the O2 correction control's job is to look at this target lumbar map and go, all right, we're at 12.4. That's what we want. But the engine's actual AFR from your O2 sensor in your car may be 13 or 14 or whatever the reading is. So the O2 correction control will automatically adjust your fuel tables so that your AFRs meet or match your target lumbar map. That is the job of the O2 correction control. It is such an awesome feature, especially for road tuning. So I've set this a little bit higher. So I've set this at 0.3 in because the higher you set this, obviously the you're always going to have a little bit of oscillation between your actual AFR and your target AFR on the target lumbar map. So as you get very close to where you want to be, you can increase this target oscillation amplitude higher and higher, and you'll get less movement than when there is a slight oscillation in the AFR. The O2 correction control won't make any sudden adjustments. This should start off at 0. The delay you can leave at the factory settings, same with proportional gain. All of these settings you can leave at their original settings from Haltech. We want to turn on enable long-term fuel control. Now, this is the map that basically shows the changes being made to the current map. So you can see from my drive last night, these are the changes that were made within the map. And I can then go back here and apply this to the base table. Then this updates my base table with them new values. And this map here then returns back to 0. So as you can see, as you're driving the car, the ECU is learning the AFR reading versus the target lumbar reading and then matching it so that you get your AFR and your target lumbar together. So that in a nutshell is how we do that. Now with injection angle or injection firing angle, with a rotary, it's kind of a universal degrees to have it at 330 degrees. Now, again, this is a degrees of the engine rotation from top dead center. So we're saying at 330 degrees of rotation past top dead center, fire the injector. Now, in these values, up in the higher RPM, you can actually adjust these by advancing them or retarding them slightly, and you will gain a little bit more power on the dyno. Again, you'll need a dyno to make them adjustments. I wouldn't recommend doing that whilst road tuning. So we're going to leave these at the 330 and 270 down in the lower RPM mark. And it's the same for the second stage too. So the rotary engine obviously has two stages of injectors. We have our primary bank, which is our first stage, and our secondary bank, which is our secondary bigger injectors for when the motor comes under boost. So we're not going to get into too much detail about the injectors and how that works, but that's where you change your injector angle firing time. So from here, I think we're ready to basically get in the car. We'll go for a drive and start doing some pulls. And I want to show you how we log the data, then check the data in the data log viewer from Haltech, and then look at the data and determine what changes need to be made. All right, so let's now dive into the car and go for a drive. Let's do a couple pulls and record some data. Okay, guys, so we're out in the car. We're up past, well, sort of on our way to Port Douglas. It's a nice long stretch of road that goes along the coastal line. It's a really beautiful day today, actually. So we're going to take the car for a spin, do some pulls, and record the data. Then I'm going to show you how to have a look at that data, make changes to the map, and adjust your AFR readings, or obviously let the O2 correction control do the work for you. So on the computer right now, what we're seeing, we're on our main tuning page, and the map that I'm showing you at the moment is our long-term trim map for the O2 correction control. So what's that? That's going to basically change values as we're driving around. You'll see it changing and adjusting things as our target lumber changes and our O2 correction or O2 AFR reading, the actual AFR reading, changes against what our target lumber is or what we want our AFR to be. The O2 correction control will make them changes for us. And you can see on the bottom here where I've got my cursor, as we're driving, you will see this draw and show you in real time the O2, the target lumber AFR, what we should be, and the actual AFR, which is in the red. So the green is what we should be and the red is what we actually are. And then the table at the top is going to be the changes that the O2 correction control is going to make for us. So let's start the car up and go for a drive. So when you're starting off doing this map, don't just jump in and drive the car like you stole it. You want to go through and start off with a little bit of RPMs at a time. So you might only rev the car out to 3,000 and hold it on 3,000 for as long as you can. Record that data, pull over, check it. If everything's good, move on to the next tape, move up in RPM, and just keep doing that until you get quite high in the map, right? And you want to do this on low boost, as lowest boost as you can possibly run. So you can see there now on the computer, the O2 correction control is already making changes to the map as we're driving. So as our target lumber is changing, it's trying to match our actual AFR readings to match that target lumber line there as we're driving along. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to slow down. I'm going to hit my data log button. So I have using the Haltech keypad, I've programmed one of the buttons so that I can switch on and switch off my data logging. And the beauty about doing this is if you're doing pulls like this and you only want to see a short segment of data, I can press it to start logging the data, and then as soon as I've finished the pull, I press stop. That way I've only got a small amount of data to analyze. And also too, if you record, you can record the entire drive, but the annoying part with that is when you extract it from the ECU, it takes quite a while for the ECU to extract it into the NSP software so that you can then view it in the data logger. So it's handy to have a button that you can stop and start the data logging process. Okay, so we've pulled over. Let's have a look at our data. We can see from our map that there's been quite a few different changes there. So it's done some changes down in this lower section. It's done a few changes up here in the 14 PSI section. Alright, so let's have a look at the data. So here's our latest data log entry. It was 13 seconds long. So let's open it up in the data log viewer. So this will open the data log viewer up. Down here you have all of your sensors and everything that's been recorded, and you can literally just double click on and add whatever one you want to analyze. Now after you've done that, you can save a workspace. I've already saved my workspace, so I'm going to load one here. Alright, so here we have the pull. So I have over here we've got throttle position, boost, our target lumbar, which is the white one, and then our actual AFR reading, which is the yellow one. Now as you can see, we've hit wide open throttle, had a little bit of a lean section here which we can fix up. Then it corrects itself, going slightly rich, and then it comes back onto our line, then again slightly rich, back onto our line and slightly rich. Second gear is relatively similar, but much closer. So, and we can actually correct these and make these a little bit better. But basically what we would do, for example, let's just say this section here, we're running a little bit lean, right? So this is at 6,000 RPM. You can see here 6,000 RPM, and our boost is at 8.9 psi, right? So we got a little bit of a lean point. So if we go back to our map and we look at 6,000, I think it was 6,000, was it? Yeah, 6,000 at 8.9. So 6,000, 8.9. So let's add one in there. All right, and that's basically it. Now that's going to add a little bit more fuel in that section, and then what we do is we just repeat the process. We go through, we do a pull, you record the data, pull over, analyze the data until you've got that line as close as you can. Now I'm not going to play too much more with this because we're putting this on a dyno, and it'll just be, basically I'll save a ton of fuel doing it on a dyno. The beauty about using a dyno and instead of road tuning is you can get much more precise changes to this AFR reading, and you can really hone it in. So there you have it, guys. That is how you road tune, or how I have been road tuning and got this engine and the map to where it is now. And let me show you what it can do. Just even in the state that the tune's in now, I'm quite comfortable to push the engine a bit, only on low boost. Keep in mind I'm only at 14 psi. I'm not upping the boost past there, and I don't have the methanol injection system switched on under 15 psi. So it's only spraying when it goes over 15 psi, but we're not tuning that part of the map today. So let's get moving, and yeah. Alright, exhaust valve completely open. Listen to that baby rumble. Alright, data logger on. Let's do it. subscribing to the channel. It really helps us out. We've got a Toyota Supra that we're putting